Hey friends, Dave Paulides, K9 Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video channel. And it's another edition of Huck TV. This is a missing person edition. Huck being the executive producer. She took a nap, so it's going to be me solo today, but she's carefully watching over these. Yes, thank you for being here. I appreciate you stopping by. And a couple of housekeeping things. Missing 411, the UFO Connection, is sold out, the premiere showing. And I'm humbled that anybody wanted to come and that we could sell it out is phenomenal. So thank you. And I've gotten a lot of notes from people, hey Dave, you have extra tickets now. There's no extra tickets. The theater's only so big. Fire marshal says so many people, so we're sold out. And I never thought we'd sell as many as we did, and we did, so I'm sorry there's not more. And just before airtime, somebody sent me a note, got me really depressed. Apparently there's some YouTuber out there that took our trailer and tried to dissect it second by second and tried to, I don't know, make fun of, demean what we're gonna do in the movie. I can't believe people. They can't do original content, so they go and they attack somebody who is doing original content. That's a pretty weak life in my mind. I'm sorry, I've never been able to do that, and frustrating as all heck, to say the least, folks. So today we've got 3 super interesting cases of missing people. And we've got some great letters and some great stories, and I'm very, very thankful. So let's get to the letters to begin with. Hey Dave, I'm sorry, but I just felt compelled to write today. The other day I was catching up on some videos I've missed, and you alluded to something like wishing you would have known, or not being enough, or something to that effect when it pertains to your son. I'm sorry for even bringing up the subject of suicide, as I can feel the pain it causes you. I know because I've heard from hundreds of parents that are in the same position I am. If you're not a parent, you'll never get it. You'll never get it. Losing a son or a daughter, per my counselor, is the hardest thing to get over as a parent. And I don't want to hammer the subject, but trust me, it's different. I'm trying to keep my eyes dry while I type this. While I've been suicidal since I was 8 or 9 years old, I'm now 46. Please believe that there was nothing you could have done differently. I know this to be true. The only thing that's kept me alive has been wondering if tomorrow will be better. But had I made the decision, there's nothing anyone could have made me do or not do. I'm sorry for writing this, truly. I'm sorry there is even a need to write it. I just hate seeing people in unnecessary pain. I realize you'll always have a pain of loss, and I'm not trying to take that from you. But I need you to know that those of us who have those feelings, we don't put that on anyone. It's our struggle. And if we knew how to relieve it, we would do so, whatever that was required. I would guess there are thousands of us in the world who have those thoughts and feelings, like we would be better off gone, that maybe the world would be better without us. It's like a dark cloud that surrounds us and we can't make it go away. Just a couple weeks ago, I had that cloud envelop me, seemingly out of nowhere. It's just part of my life, I guess, but it's not because of anyone. I don't blame anyone for it. And if I made that choice, it wouldn't be because anyone in my life isn't enough. Believe me, if Ben could talk to you now, he would tell you it's not your fault. So please don't be that hard on yourself. Here's the part that people I don't think get if you're not a parent. A parent is supposed to take away those pains. It's supposed to make life a little easier for you. Take away those bumps in the road. And when you can't do it, or you're not there, you don't feel like you were a good parent. Now, in the hundreds of hours of counseling I've had, I've been told hundreds of times probably, no, that's not true, and blah, blah, blah. You know, still, when you commit to being a parent at a really high level, and it's not good enough, it's a knife right in the heart. That's for me to overcome, but I appreciate your kind words, truthfully. I'm sorry I'm writing this as I feel it's going to upset you. Yeah, I did. I just felt like I needed to. I'm so sorry for your loss. You're helping so many people, and everyone that watches your videos can see it. I wish you could somehow find peace. I realize that's unlikely, but I wish it if you could anyway. I'm not going to tell you I pray for you every night because I don't pray every night. I am a willful sinner, and I've been told that God doesn't know me, and I couldn't hear him if he did. I don't think prayers for me would mean very much anyway, but I hope you find something close to peace before the ride is over. I hope that reading this doesn't do what writing it did to me. It makes me very sad that you have those dark days. Because I think thousands and thousands of people out there have those really, really dark days. And the proof is in the pudding. How many suicides there are every day in the United States? It's overwhelming. It's sick that our government doesn't see the need to address this at an ultra high level. It's like they don't care. I'm sorry if some people think our government does care, but I don't really think they do. And if they understood what locking us down did to the mental health of our children, and they weighed that against the good that they think that locking us down did, yeah, I would like to debate that with some people in the government or CDC. I'm sorry. Next letter. I'm responding to your video where you asked the village about experiences with triangle UFOs. Back in the fall of 2007 or 2008, a friend and I were traveling down Interstate 271 south in northeast Ohio. Part of that interstate runs along the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, and that's the area we were driving. We would have been in between the cities of Richfield and Peninsula. I had an urge to look to my left, and I noticed a black triangle-shaped craft hovering just over the tree line. I pulled over to the side of the freeway and rolled my window down to get a better view. Although it was evening, there was still enough ambient light to see this craft against the horizon. It was to the left of us, where there was a small hill, and we could see it hovering just above the tree line. The triangle appeared to be a very large, black in color, had a glowing light at each point. The only sound, kind of like this. The only sound I could hear was traffic on the freeway, but I could not hear anything coming from this craft. It then moved smoothly over the hill and out of sight without a sound. My friend and I shared the same sentiment. Question: did we just see a UFO? There are two strange results to the story. One is that just after this happened, we continued on our way as we were heading to our scrapbook event that evening. We really didn't bring it up again at that night, and then pretty much forgot about it for years. It's almost like a memory was a dream, and although we see each other several times a year, we never talk about it until I brought it up one day several years ago. I wasn't imagining things, and she confirmed that we had experienced this. The second strange thing occurred after I started to watch your videos several years ago. When I heard you mention the strange occurrences around national parks, I started to do some research about the national park I happen to have practically in my backyard. That Valley National Park I just mentioned. Fortunately, there doesn't appear to be any strange disappearances in this specific park area, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. Our sighting of the triangle was right along the edge of the national park. Was there significance to this? I wanted to see if I could follow the path the craft flew to see what was on the ground. I didn't know if there would be any roads to get into the area it flew over, but sure enough, there was a road called Major Road that ran along the Interstate 271. When I followed that road, I noticed there are several large towers in between the road and the interstate. As the road curves away from the freeway, there's an area that is heavily gated, and there are video cameras everywhere pointing in all directions. I found this to be very odd, so when I had a chance, I searched the area on Google Earth to get a close-up. As I tried to zoom in, the details were blurred out. That really piqued my interest, and I wanted to see if it was privately owned property or not. When I went onto the county auditor's site, the only thing I could gather is that it was owned by a holding company. Is this related in any way? I'm not sure. I really don't know what the black triangular craft was or whether it was a technology made by our government or something else, but the experience let me down a rabbit hole and I'm still not done. Or wiser, laughing out loud. Thanks for all you do in your time. Anytime I hear about something in a national park, I'm paying attention. Next letter. Hey Dave, I just had a thought. What if our government already figured out the portal concept and have been testing it, or worse yet, using it on U.S. citizens? National parks are just areas that are used to draw less attention. I guess I'm safe. I'm a dumbass. I'm a retired police officer living in Cody, Wyoming, and are always in the woods either hunting, fishing, or riding my ATV. Any missing folks in your area? Oh yeah. Yes, there are. Next letter. Hey Dave, since you've been talking lately about missing people in the UFO Connection, Missing 411, the UFO Connection, you can watch the trailer on our site. Been talking lately, by the way, the movie will be released December 12th. If you've been talking lately about missing people in the UFO Connection, I just wanted to make a point with a fairly common theory relating to the nature of alien life forms. How many times do we hear about the notion that aliens must have predated our human species by possibly millions of years because they are supposedly so much more advanced than we are? Well, I hear that all the time. So they must have come into being much earlier than we did and developed their superhuman abilities. That would make sense to me. Well, there we go again, comparing other life forms in relation to our own life form. Some postulate that aliens are what we're going to become by evolving over a few million years. I absolutely do not believe that aliens are us from the future. They exist in the now like we do. My contention is that where on the spectrum of time alien life forms fit in is not really relevant to the human condition. They are not necessarily more developed than we are because they may have evolved from a much older standpoint than humans. I say the alien forms we are dealing with are simply a different species, evolved or created, whatever, they're just different than humans. From who knows where, another dimension, reality, or another part of the universe. Just as humans possess certain traits and abilities, I contend that alien beings like us began with their own peculiar abilities, intelligence, manner of communication, travel, etc. Sure, they may have progressed like we have, but they were born as aliens headed for their own destiny, not humans. Do alligators look at us and think, wow, we're going to look like them in 10 million years? No way. They were born alligators and will continue to as such, just as we were born humans and will continue as such. If you took two naked people, one from the year 350 and one from 2022, and stood them side by side, could you tell which one was from what year? Probably a 50-50 guess. Why? Because we were born into the human species and we look and act similarly. Anyway, this is mostly to say that other human imaginations sometimes are too fantastical, and the real truth of the matter is much simpler than extrapolating into ridiculous comparisons or possibilities. We are the human species. They are the alien species. That seems perfectly logical to me and not mysterious at all. What do you think, Dave? By the way, I would love to attend the screening of your third doc, The UFO Connection, but practicalities prohibit. Also, it's sold out, so that prohibits. So what do I think about that? First of all, if you go to nabigfootsearch.com and you go to that website and you read the DNA information there, and then you go to Scott Carpenter's website and you read the DNA information there about Bigfoot. Well, Bigfoot kind of walks like a human, much bigger than a human. Is it a human? Well, it runs faster than any deer, and it can do things that humans can't do. So is it human? Well, because it has different abilities, does that make it maybe a subhuman? I don't know. Okay, this next one woke me up from my slumber this afternoon. Hi Dave, I just watched your video. I know I've written to you a few times, so you might remember that I live in Rock Springs, Wyoming for 31 years. Anything I can help you with, I'll be glad to. I have a few connections still in law enforcement. I was a dispatcher back in the day for a good old sheriff. I have a few emails, and I forgot which one logged in when I write, but I wrote to you about a girls' camping trip, our history of possible Bigfoot, dogmen, and skinwalker. Also UFOs by our entire family, including my parents, who watched a cloaked football-sized craft above their house. History of abduction. I'm from Pennsylvania, whose dad woke up to a guy in an old-time deep-sea diver suit looking over him. Oh, that would freak me out. And in the 70s, 80s, the deputies saw UFOs all the time in a straight line through Telephone Canyon down to Utah. Let me read that line to you again. Pay attention, folks. And in the 70s and 80s, the deputies saw UFOs all the time in a straight line through Telephone Canyon down to Utah. Telephone Canyon. Okay. Where's that? Pay attention, ladies and gentlemen. This information is interesting to me, and it will be to you. Pay attention. This is Telephone Canyon. This is the Colorado state line, Wyoming, Cheyenne, Wyoming. Telephone Canyon, Arlington, Medicine Bow National Forest. Well, this woman says when she was a dispatcher, the deputies saw UFOs always going in this area. Put that in your memory banks and don't forget it. Don't forget that one. Why, Dave? I'm not going to tell you. Just pay attention. Just a message for you, Dave. I know I can get annoying at times, but I'm not crazy. I just get excited by your work and wish to share what I've been witnessing for 46 years. I want you to know you've helped me so much. My sister died suicide by not taking her blood clot shots, but was ruled pulmonary embolism. She followed you, so I started to as well. Right around the same time you suffered your loss, I didn't get out of bed for almost 2 years. I just started back to work last week. I may not seem like it, but watching and listening to you helped me to know I can do this and not give up. I watch your videos back to back. If you don't already, Huck reacts when you mention Ben. Just like the wind in the vortex, Huck can relay signs to you. Yeah. I've had several people tell me, well, you know, Dave, we get reincarnated. Whether you believe that or not, I don't care. And if you live a good life, this is the theory. If you live a really good life and clean life, and you do good things to people, you come back again as a human, maybe at a higher level or at another good level. If you're not really a good person and you really aren't doing the good things, you come back as a lower level piece of life. You know, maybe you're a rat, maybe you're an ant, It's an interesting theory. I've knocked it around in my brain a few times. And I know that when Ben was studying religion, we'd talk about these things at length. All right, enough about that. So I've told you that in 2018, I was on Coast to Coast with George Knapp. We're talking about missing people for a couple hours. And at the end of the 2 hours, out of nowhere, George starts talking. And this talk is in the movie. And in fact, you can hear part of the talk right at the beginning of the trailer. He starts saying, you know, Dave, it appears that these people are dropped, they're taken, they're removed. Then he goes on and he tells this story that Harry Reid, a retired senator from Nevada, who had an interest in UFOs, told George to go to Washington, D.C. and meet a man from the Defense Intelligence Agency that had worked at Skinwalker Ranch. And he'd give him an interview. Well, George says he went back there and interviewed with the guy, and at the end of the interview, the guy says, hey, you know Dave Paulides? George goes, yeah, I know him really well. And the guy says, well, we think that Paulides' work has something to do with what's going on at the ranch. Now, nobody has told me anything more to extrapolate on what part of my research has to do with what's going on at the ranch. But many months ago, I came across something, and people are starting to send it to me now, so I might as well talk about it. So, NIDS, the National Institute of Discovery of Sciences, which Robert Bigelow ran, that did the research at the ranch when Bigelow bought Skinwalker Ranch, they had a board of directors that kind of oversaw the investigations, gave it direction, blah, blah, blah. And one of the board members was a man named Hal Puthoff, Puthoff. Well, he wrote a peer-reviewed paper called Ultra-Terrestrial Models. And he was working at that time for the Institute for Advanced Studies in Austin, Westlake Hills, Texas. So, I won't read you all of it, but I'm going to take parts of it and we're going to talk about it. So, in this, he talks and he says, under consideration in this paper are two seminal statements and their concomitants that currently unknown as follows, that there is an unidentified phenomena interacting with the human population on Earth. Now, this is after he had been at the ranch, remember that. It is currently unknown whether the phenomena is exclusively extraterrestrial, extra-dimensional, crypto-terrestrial, demonic or jinn, proto-ancient human, time travelers, or some combination or mutation of all of these. However, it appears highly unlikely that the phenomena per se is not constituted exclusively of members of the current human population. Well, that's interesting. So after they're studying the ranch, Puthoff writes a paper like this. So what did they learn at the ranch that prompted him to write this? Obviously, they believe that something along the lines that I just read to you was happening and is happening now. In this paper, we address the above under the overarching theme ultra-terrestrials in order to develop a template to be matched against data at hand and that may be procured in the future. Okay. Background. As one takes a decades-long view of the unidentified aerial phenomena topic, it is easy to become frustrated by what one sees as a lack of robust progress in establishing sure and certain ironclad data points about even the most fundamental of issues. And that is one of the very difficult things they had when NIDS studied the ranch. There wasn't a lot they could put their finger on to replicate. there isn't a lot they could put their finger on and say cause and effect. Is the phenomena predominantly nuts and bolts? Is the source of the phenomena predominantly terrestrial, ultra-terrestrial? Are oftentimes related topics such as claimed abductions, crop circles, and animal mutilations truly related, or are they separate categories of the phenomena? Now, as I'm reading this, Pudov was on the board of directors of NIDS. DIA tells NAP that while they were studying the ranch, that my research had something to do with what was going on. So, as I'm reading this, I'm kind of pushing my way through the fog, trying to see what that all meant. Are institutions such as governments truly that much more knowledgeable than we are? So, take that thought and hold it for a second. If the Defense Intelligence Agency had a team at the ranch for 2 or 3 years studying what was happening there, they obviously didn't know squat about what was happening there, otherwise they wouldn't be studying it, right? And in the document it says, other more proactive measures could be taken ranging from relative prosaic, setting up all-weather, all-sky optical IR monitoring stations, through the more tech-intensive approaches to the arcane, such as evidence anomalous manipulation of human genetic structure and stretching to the esoteric, remote viewing, telepathic, etc. Then he talks about aliens. These include such categories as hidden communities of ETs or gods, possibly stranded here millennia ago. Now this is interesting to me, because the word demonic has come up several times in relationship to what's happening at the ranch. And it sort of came out of what NIDS was doing and what DIA was doing. And now he's talking about ETs and gods. He's a PhD writing this paper. Think about that. And by the way, this paper is available online. You can find it. So, various hypotheses are generated and pursued, and data are gathered. Considerable intellectual effort goes into attempting to fit between the two hypothesis testing. However, this approach could profit by incorporating elements of a more forensic gumshoe style, as in criminalistics and intelligence work. Does that mean like what I'm doing with missing people? The very fact that so many hypotheses remain on the table regarding the source of the phenomena clearly indicates that forensic work to date has been inadequate to even eliminate certain options. I would agree, and I never have. The ET hypothesis in this scenario, crash retrievals of nuts and bolts alien hardware, have occurred. Setting aside the claims of Colonel Corso, if such is the case, certain telltale signatures should emerge under scrutiny. Moreover, some evidence indicates this could be the case. Colonel Corso was an Army intelligence, and he was given technology that supposedly was taken from crash sites, and he was told to mainline these into our world, such as fiber optics, transistors, etc. There's a really good book about Corso's research and work. If biological specimens have been retrieved, the development of unusual lines of biological genetic inquiry by highly qualified professionals whose career path would seem to diverge suddenly from what might have been extrapolated from their earlier work. The isolated humans hypothesis, an isolated high-tech closed community of humans with somewhat advanced scientific knowledge, exists apart from the known culture. Telltale signatures might include continuing observation of technology only somewhat in advance of public knowledge, unaccounted for missing financial assets and industrial-grade resources, possibly including individuals, apparent covert misdirection of society in the absence of real evidence to accept the likelihood of the ET presence, the relative lack of evidence of extremely advanced sophistication of hardware clearly beyond present day. This is a good one here. The stranded or colonizing ET God hypothesis. Telltale signatures might include evidence in myth for a high-tech interpretation of claimed devices beyond human capability of the era to manufacture. And I think what he's going with that is there is a lot of artwork that's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old that looks to have almost like a spaceship in it. There's artwork that's been dated hundreds of years old that seems to have aliens in it. So, is that it? The interdimensional or time travelers hypothesis, gaining access to our space-time continuum. Telltale signs might take the form of Fortean phenomena of instant appearance, disappearance of beings. In a reverse process, humans experience portal access to alternate realities, appearance of beings out of sync in dress, mannerism, or language, or technology similarly undecipherable, financial transaction timelines, or future-orient activity indicative of advanced foreknowledge, evidence for teleportation or individuals or material over geophysical distances, appearance of humanoids in conformance with predicted genetic evolution of present-day Homo sapiens. Here's where I know a little bit. The portal information, that's real. I'm 100% convinced. After talking to PhD physicists, I know that there's some of the smartest people in the world that are working on this right now in other countries. So the idea that it wouldn't be true, no, it's true. And I think that's a real issue that they're looking at in the ranch. One of the things they said, ultra-terrestrials, density of sightings over decades, if not centuries, potentially indicative of present-time local as opposed to extraterrestrial source. In other words, the UAP phenomenon is so ubiquitous as to argue against the simple model of occasionally visiting ET explorer. I'm pretty well convinced they're here, and they're living here. Like I said, I've always believed they're in the water. This is a great one. Interactions with humanoid genotype ranging from modern humans to creatures, including sightings of little people over the centuries, encounters with non-humans that haunt our folklore, let alone genetically engineered biological robots or drones. All variants within the lexicon of alternative forms of the human genome. Little people, I've heard about them from almost every tribe of Native Americans in North America. One of the things they say here is he talks about ETs or ultra-terrestrials may have a fear of human diseases. Makes some sense. And then, on this one page, he uses a word that caught my attention. He says, clearly, the devil is in the details, but one could speculate that the former might in fact be more dire than the later, considering that they had been here amongst us, perhaps in personal ways. Well, title of my book, Missing 411, The Devil's in the Detail. Somebody trying to tell me something here? Nah, maybe not. So, title of this is Ultra-Terrestrial Models. You can get it online, you can read it. I get a little frustrated sometimes when people say, yeah, your work's related to this. And I believe them, because there's no reason not to believe them. And I just wish that they would step up and say how they made that connection. But, all right, 3 cases today. And the first case is of a little boy, Kelly Whitman, 2 years old, August 1st, 1939. and the location is very important. Happened in Kramer, Minnesota. So this is Kramer. This is Finland, Minnesota. This is Lake Superior. It's about 2 miles from Lake Superior. Tons of water, marshes. Do you know over the last couple of years how many times I've told you about cases around Lake Superior? Do you know how many times? It's been associated with so many disappearances I lost track. Airplanes, boats, people. Well, on August 1st, 1939, Mrs. Whitman and her son, 2-year-old Kelly, and a 7-year-old son go out to pick blueberries. The dad is working and off the property. And that's important because a lot of times these cases happen and the father is not home. And I think that's odd. I think it's really odd how many times this happens. Well, anyhow, Mr. Whitman isn't there picking blueberries, and their house is in a burn scar area. So it's pretty much open. Well, she lost sight of Kelly. Kelly was last with the brother, the 7-year-old. He lost sight of him too. She searches for an hour, calls his name, yells, looks, can't find him. So just by chance, their neighbor was a U.S. Forest Service regional ranger named O.M. Eckbeck. E-C-K-B-E-C-K. Eckbeck. And she gets a hold of Eckbeck and she explains, I need help. Eckbeck turns and calls the Lake County Sheriff, Emil Nelson. Nelson turns and calls the CCC, and at 75 people respond to the property. Now that is good work. The more you can get that ball rolling, the more people you can get on site, the better off you're going to be. Now, there's some people who believe that at the beginning of the search, you keep large numbers of people out. The other train of thought is when you're dealing with a small child, you get as many people into that area as you can. Two different trains of thought. But anyhow, they come in and they search non-stop day and night for 4 days, calling the boy's name, looking for him. They don't find anything. They don't hear anything. Well, Nelson says he thinks maybe the boy was grabbed by a bear. But Mrs. Whitman says, no, that my boy did not get grabbed by a bear. We've lived here for a long time. We've never seen a bear on the property, and we've never seen any bear scat in the area. It's pretty conclusive. Okay, so they didn't buy that one, so let's try the next argument. Nelson says, well, the boy probably walked a mile to the highway and got ran over, and they picked the kid up and they dumped him later. Local reports for local consumption. What can I throw against that wall and get you to believe? And that's really what it is. There's no evidence of this. So the dad, Lawrence Whitman, was working on a road crew. He gets back. He stays on site for 3 days. The boy was wearing a yellow shirt. Yellow should have stuck out big time. Well, during the search, the ranger had a brilliant idea. There was a lookout 2 miles from the Whitman house, and he sends one of the searchers to the lookout with binoculars, and he says, the only job you have is you look for a bunch of birds flying in and out of a certain location. Why birds? Because once birds are on a body, you know exactly where to look. Well, the guy was there for 3 days, didn't see any birds, didn't see anything. And eventually came back. Nothing. Area was searched shoulder to shoulder through swamps, waist-deep water. The area was searched again later on many, many times. The brother was interviewed and said, yeah, I was playing and I just lost track of my brother. Interestingly, there are many young men missing from Minnesota that have never been found. And you have these areas in these states where kids are not found, and sometimes they're all in their 20s and 30s, some they're very young, some it's just girls. Minnesota has a lot of young men. As I was doing the research on this study, I started to think, can you imagine being the Whitmans on this piece of ground way out there in rural Minnesota and living your whole life and getting up every morning and realizing that you lost your son here? And where is he? The other part of this is, and I realized this when I first started to do the research 11 years ago on missing people. When these big incidents happen, and this is a big incident, a missing boy, this is probably the first search and rescue that these people had ever done. The Forest Service Ranger, the sheriff, probably the first one they ever did on a big scale. And you know, when you do something for the first time, chances of you making mistakes are huge. Huge. And you always want to look at, most people in law enforcement want to look strong. And they give answers like, oh yeah, we know. Yeah. Very few times will you find somebody in law enforcement that's willing to admit they don't know something and they're going to get outside resources. In all of these cases that I talked to you about, I can only imagine how many times mistakes have been made, because I'm sure there have been many. Sometimes you read about them, most of the time you don't. All right, next case. I don't talk about these very often. A missing plane. A Canadian Pacific airliner, a DC-4. This is what the plane looked like. Went missing July 21st, 1951 at 12:20 a.m. off the coast of Alaska. Plane left Vancouver and was on a nonstop flight to Elmendorf Air Force Base in Anchorage. Plane had Canadian citizens, 2 Canadian military divers, 28 U.S. servicemen. It was a 1,348-mile flight, hugging the Pacific coast of British Columbia and Alaska. It was scheduled to fly into Anchorage, refuel, and fly on to Tokyo. The captain of the plane was Victor Fox, a Canadian citizen. The crew checked in at 12:20 a.m. over Cape Spencer in Alaska, 80 miles off the Alaska coast at 9,000 feet. The Cape is part of the Glacier Bay National Park, 50 miles west of Juneau. The flight path from there went north to Elmendorf Air Force Base. Now, let's look at that. So, they left Vancouver down here. If you ever get a chance, take the cruise up through the islands of Alaska. And when you're going through the islands, you're always around land. It's absolutely beautiful. Well, as they said, they hugged the coast of British Columbia, up through Alaska. And then they get to Cape Spencer, and they're about 80 miles off the coast. They check in. We're at 9,000 feet. We're turning, and we're heading to Anchorage. So they turn, and they head north to Anchorage. Somewhere between here and here, they disappeared. Nothing was ever found. No calls for help. No nothing. There was no bad weather. There was nothing unusual. So when the plane didn't arrive in Alaska, Air traffic control checked with Canadian air traffic control to see if they had heard anything. Nope. This is where the thing starts to get really weird. The USA took exclusive search and rescue control for that plane, even though it was a Canadian plane. And our military took charge of all search and rescue. And the USA kept that search and rescue criteria exclusively for them for 10 days. And then they opened it up for Canada. Now the searchers had 30 planes per day looking, including a U.S. Coast Guard, helicopter, cutter, U.S. Air Force, Royal Canadian Air Force, cutters from Canada. They stated that bad weather inundated the search efforts almost every day. And for the first few days of the disappearance, it was really bad. Now, for those first few days, it came out that on board the plane were 3 high-ranking officials from the United Nations. That's kind of weird. And later, about 5 days later, they retracted that line. Now, in 1951, when this happened, passenger lists were standard protocol. How could that mistake be made? I don't know. And that's bothered me on this case. The search and rescue lasted 3 months. It was never clear why the USA restricted Canada from participating during those first 10 days. Now, 95% of the passengers on the plane were male, and the plane was never found. So, from the point that they checked in to the point that they were to arrive at Anchorage, they were almost over water the entire time. Folks, that's important. When planes crash into water, a lot of things happen. First of all, they break apart. There's things in the plane that float. Friends, they should have found something. Just like on MH370, they should have found something. This isn't normal. And it isn't normal that people are saying, well, yeah, we have these 3 UN officials on the plane. Oh, no, we don't. Well, who were those 3 UN officials? Why were there 2 Canadian divers on the plane going to Tokyo? It's kind of weird. All of those questions were never answered. But it was one of those disappearances that truly is unusual. And considering, we're 70 years later, still nothing's ever been found. Yeah, I think it's weird. And over that period of time, bodies never washed up on a beach anywhere. Just saying. The next case happened this last summer, and I've been following it closely because it bothers me a lot. Quang, a Vietnamese man, 66 years old, missing August 21st, 2022, disappeared between 3 and 4 p.m. Time makes sense to you? Remember, the number one time to disappear in my world? 4 p.m. So he disappeared between 3 and 4 p.m. A location called Split Mountain in Kings Canyon National Park. Split Mountain is about 14,064 feet, and it's considered one of the easier 14ers to climb. It's in the Sierra Crest range of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Now, Mr. Quang, this is him. This is the flyer from the National Park Service on this gentleman. Now, this man was not your normal everyday weekend climber. He was world-class climber. He made 2 attempts to climb Everest. Now, some of you say, oh, well, he didn't summit Everest. So, friends, it takes a real pro to turn around and walk away and not risk your life. I have much more respect than somebody who would do anything to summit. To make 2 attempts and walk away takes a lot of courage. He also summited Kilimanjaro and Denali. On the 21st, he was hiking with 2 Vietnamese friends. And at 13,200 feet, he fell behind his other friends. And he told them to go forward and summit. Point of separation. So he tells them to summit, and they go ahead and they have him in sight during most of the time. But they said that there's a period of about 20 minutes where they don't see him. Now, where is this? So, Split Mountain, Yosemite National Park's up here, Kings Canyon National Park, Sequoia National Park. It kind of goes Yosemite, Kings Canyon, Sequoia. This is the eastern side of the Sierras. There are some huge mountains right in here. In fact, the biggest mountain in California, Mount Whitney, is right there. When you drive the 395 highway along this side, it is gorgeous. So he's right here. And the plan is that they were going to day hike this. They didn't have any, I want you to take a good look at this, man. They didn't bring any overnight supplies. They just brought food and water. Well, when his friends came down and realized he was gone, they called Inyo County Search and Rescue, who called the National Park Service. And the next day, search and rescue started. The National Park Service brought drones, the CHP helicopter with FLIR, multiple canine units. Multiple ground pounders were picked up by the Highway Patrol and dropped at the location where Mr. Than was last seen. There was a 6-day search and rescue. They found nothing. Nothing. There's nothing growing on this mountain, folks. At 13,000 feet, you're way above timberline. There's nothing up there. Canines didn't pick up a scent trail. This isn't... How could I explain this? This isn't a mountain that takes direct aid, meaning you got to be on ropes with carabiners. No. There's a trail up to the top. This is pretty easy. Considering what this man had done in his life, this was an easy hike. So, remember, he fell behind. He didn't feel well. That's number 1. You have point of separation, number 2. No scent trail by the canines. Well, that's not normal, number 3. No tracks. Granite everywhere. He's in a national park and he's in a cluster zone of missing people. I read some of the comments from Search and Rescue, and they tried to make this sound like, oh yeah, this just happens all the time. No, this doesn't happen all the time. And no, you just can't say, oh yeah, this happened and just let's forget it. No, this is somebody's life. Why can't you find somebody on a barren mountain? Quang had told his friends he would wait there for him. How many times have I told you in stories, have you read in my books, where somebody said they were going to wait behind while somebody else summited and they came down? It's a famous story in Colorado. A woman was hiking with a man. She got tired. He said, well, we can go back. And she goes, no, you go ahead and summit. I'll wait here for you. He goes, okay. He goes up, he summits, gets his picture taken, blah, blah, blah. He comes back. She's not there. This is on Mount of the Holy Cross. There was a huge search. This woman was never found. Almost identical scenario. So what's going on here? You can't just easily walk away from these things. Especially if they happen time after time. I get a bit fired up about this. I'm sorry. I don't like it when people don't give a case its due. Especially when you're dealing with a man who had made climbing his life, and a man who was not on a dangerous hike. I don't get this at all. So, this is the flyer from the National Park Service. He is considered a missing person. They have not found him, and they do not know where Mr. Quang is at. So, those are our cases. California, Alaska, where a plane disappeared, and Minnesota, where a young boy disappeared and was never found. 3 cases in total, probably 30 people who were never found, just disappeared off the face of the earth. Odd, to say the least. Very odd. So remember, December 12th, if you can take that trailer, the movie trailer, just put in your computer Missing 411, the UFO Connection, under the Can-Am Missing Project YouTube page. Copy the trailer and put it on your social media sites. I'd be grateful. It would help us. And know that on this site right now, I have a series of different things going on. Every week I have a news broadcast that I put out on News of the World. And then every week I'm in the second week now of putting out a Bigfoot 101 class. Class 2 is going to come out very soon. Class 2 already came out. I'm sorry. Class 3 will come out later this week. And we're touching on all of the facts associated with the Bigfoot world. And the reviews have been pretty good so far, so I'm humbled. Thank you. So my channel has about 370 different videos you could watch. And I'm humbled that anyone watches me at all. Thank you for the letters you've written and the time you've given to me. Be safe. When you go out today, do something nice for somebody. Doesn't have to be a big thing. But if you can, donate to your local food shelter. People need food now. We're going through some tough times. I hope you have a great week. Paulides out.